Calling our pre-commission meeting at 8:05. Good morning to everyone. We'll jump into our agenda here. Looking at our consent agenda, meeting minutes, and then we have the grant amendment for the fourth grant amendment for the Florida Ohio Avenue Improvements Project. Any questions about that?
Mayor, we do have to add, if there are just a couple of things we have to add, just us being efficient and getting things in, then things come after we send it out, and we just hate, taking it down, the agenda, taking it down, then putting it back up. It just confuses people. So we need to add approval of the commission to appoint Mayor Sam Peebles as Mayor Pro Tem under consent agenda.
Now, do we have to do that? Would that already be?
Yeah, I asked that question yesterday because we have it.
Your resolution provides for the turnover pretty regularly, but it does require the action to be done by motion.
Okay.
And do you want me to tell you the other two things we'll need to add, or you get into that?
You can go ahead. Okay.
So we need also approval of a resolution for the local mitigation strategy plan, and it's a collaboration in the entire county and all the cities. You have it here, and to adopt it, we have to pass a resolution and then send it to the state.
Resolution of a revolution.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You're absolutely right. Now, so this plan here is, it includes all of the cities within Bay County in terms of our strategy for local mitigation.
Anyone on the commission against putting that on the consent? All right, add it to the consent agenda, and the next one.
And this one here will probably not go on the consent agenda. It will go on just your regular agenda. Is the approval of resolution 2025-05456, and I'll give you this later, for the commission to approve us putting on the trim notice, the notice of stormwater rates.
Okay. All right, add that for number 20. That'll be under. It'll still be on the new business. So we issue new business. Right?
New business, yes.
So we can add that for number 20. Any objections to adding that for number 20? Looking at our old business, agenda item number 13. We asked city attorney to bring this back to us. Ordinance regarding the recreational vehicles.
It is a significant revision, but I think a significant simplification that addresses the key points I heard y'all discussing at your meetings. So it starts with your current regulation, but allows, in addition to the backyard RVs, just RVs, to be parked in the driveway so long as they're not in any portion of the right-of-way. They're maintained in an operable condition, and they are properly licensed and not used for living or sleeping purposes. If there was more you want to add to this, we certainly can, but this is the highlights I
You want to say
gathered.
backyard or side yard?
There was not consensus on side yard, so I didn't add it.
Can we talk about that? I thought the side yard would be another, because it's just giving them another option if they're in the right of way that they can either park in the back or the side.
I like the side better than the front.
Yeah.
So
I just figure they should exhaust all option. If they have an option to put it on the side yard, they're still in violation. You know, that gets ticky-tacky. You know what I mean?
So you're saying take it off the.
No, just add the side
Just
yard,
add
side
side
or
yard.
backyard.
So backyard, side yard, or driveway, as long as not in the right of way, is what I'm hearing you say.
Now, side yard, backyard, or driveway. Now, would they be able to put one in each place at that point?
Potentially, yeah. And now this only addresses RV. So if they had a trailer that qualified as a recreational vehicle, whether it was a van or a big motorhome, if they had more than one, yes, this would allow them to park more than one.
Most people just have one RV. So.
Yeah, the odds of multiple people having multiple operational RVs probably don't live in the neighborhood. Maybe a handful. One thing I noticed is, on page 23, it still says Panama City. instead of Monday.
How about that?
So what's
Okay.
the definition of right of way? Because I know I've heard like behind the power poles.
Like 30
and then
feet
if they're
from the
not
center.
power poles, it's so many feet from the
Well,
road.
it's not always from the center of the road. I mean, it can be offset for sure.
Yeah.
So right,
There's some places that the center of the road is not the center of the right of way. And, you know, the road may be offset, so saying we're gonna measure 30 feet from the center line, that's not 100% accurate.
Okay.
As a rule of thumb,
It's a
the
rule.
telephone poles is usually what we use as a guide.
Or water meters.
Or a water meter in the yard is the two that we would use.
Amy?
Yes.
so right of ways generally include, they're not limited to vehicular paved right of way, is the point I want to make. They usually extend beyond it, to include sidewalks, sometimes landscaping, sometimes ditches, culverts. So y'all can define it however you want, but the point I want to make is that it's not just the vehicular paved right of way. It also includes some of the pedestrian and other right of way improvements or facilities that support the use of the vehicular right of way.
Isn't right of way just the area that the city owns? So you could base it off of your property line.
If you're in a platted subdivision,
Yeah.
yes, I'm not sure is that true for every city street? Is every city street marked off of a platted city subdivision? Or is right of way different in certain areas?
Not a subdivision, but a plat, yes.
Okay,
The 1911 plat specifies the right of way in the historic part of Glenhaven.
okay. So the right of way is defined then?
Okay. Yeah.
So they can or cannot.
So just the caveat there,
Right, I had to park on their own property.
that's exactly right. You're exactly right.
Driveway, correct?
And
Outside of
Driveway
your-
along-
So hold on. All right, so it's right of way. All right, let the owner figure out what their right of way is or isn't, I guess, is what, because everybody's right of way might be different. Is that what
I
we're
was
saying?
just
My
ready to say that.
concern is if you're putting an RV in a driveway and it's encompassed in the right of way, you're gonna put code enforcement, I mean,
Then we give them a violation at that point.
right.
And they give better options, side or back.
Side or back. Because it would have to be a really short RV to fit in a driveway where you're not infringing on the right of way.
It's okay.
City manager.
So Mayor, one of the complaints from many residents is that, yes, long RVs were in the, I think you received this as well, on sidewalks, that they had to go around the sidewalk in order to walk. I know you probably have received this as well. And so that would mean that that's part of our right of way. They have that option of parking on the side and the back. Some right of ways the city has abandoned. So then that's different than what the city owns. So we need to just make sure we all understand that.
I think, because, you know, people are gonna come to us and say, well, what's the right of way? And since it can vary from property to property, probably the best thing to do is just refer them to code enforcement and they can come out and take a look at it.
They could just type in property and Bay County property appraisers, look at their line.
They should.
Well, but it's not, those are inaccurate maps.
Yeah.
That's actually not super reliable. You could say if you want to give some certainty,
Because my survey may be different than what the,
you could say 10 feet from the vehicular, parked in the driveway so long as it's more than 10 feet away from the paved right of way, like the vehicular right of way,
Yeah.
used by the public, the traveling public, not your driveway. So
Private property.
that way you keep a visibility window, and if their driveway is long enough to support the size or length of their RV,
Yeah.
code enforcement can measure it with a 10-foot stick. Yeah, they're,
Can you say private property? And then that would be private property versus,
not necessarily, because the city may have an easement, a right-of-way easement. I'm a little,
I just saying, just.
it would still be both
I had a little
public right of way and
burden.
private property at
I
that
mean,
point, so no,
yeah, because we're talking about private property altogether though.
right. And the goal is to get it all entirely on the
On
private,
private property.
Yeah,
Right.
entirely on private.
but maintain that visibility window.
My biggest concern is that we're not sending code enforcement out all the time because people are over the sidewall. And that's where we're getting our calls from. So I don't know how
So
to
it's,
clarify that.
I guess, the only way to clarify this is just not to park on the driveway.
You could say not in the driveway, or you could say not within that 10 feet that's closest to the paved right of way.
You're in violation. That, Ms. Vicky, that is my concern of what we already are sitting on, the 300 plus that are in driveways. To guess, the majority of them are gonna be in violation. If we're talking the city right away into that driveway, they're gonna be in violation.
Side yard or backyard?
Unless you have a 12 or 14 mini light or something like that, it's gonna have to go in the side yard or the backyard. So I'm just making you aware of this, because I know the size of some of these that are in the driveway. So,
And there are gonna be many instances where we're gonna have to pay a surveyor to go out to mark the right of way, because they're not gonna believe that the sidewalk or the water meter is on the right of way.
I'm going to ask staff, if you're going to speak, will you please come to the microphone? Because people who come back and listen to this can't hear the conversations that are going on.
will make you understand that the ones that I know that are out there, the 300 plus that are in driveways, are gonna infringe upon the city right of way. So code enforcement will have to address this. And so that's why I want you to be very clear on this, that if you're saying the driveway, then, and they can't go on the right of way of that driveway, they're gonna be in violation. So, I mean, a clear signal, me personally, would say to put it on the side or in the backyard. And then you don't have that argument, because what Chris just referred to is if they object to it, we'll have to hire a surveyor to come out and find the exact right of way where it sits. So just be aware of, where we're going, the way it's written.
All right, so we're adding side as part of that. Do we want to keep driveway in there, or just make, side yard as the alternative to backyard? All right, think about it. We'll come back to it.
Kiki had asked a question.
Did we say yes to the sites? If you say yes to the side yard, isn't it still the problem with the right of way? Wouldn't you have to clarify the right of way on the side yard as well?
Depends on if their parcel falls onto a corner area. For example, over at like Main and 17th, where 17th Street is unimproved, that's right away through there. So if they park on, it's their side yard because they face Main Avenue, and I may have Main Avenue wrong, and their side is on 17th Street. Well, they're parking on their side yard, but we do have right of way that goes through there. So yes, that is, there are some, not for every parcel, but for some of those parcels, it will be very tricky to define exactly where their side yard is in our right of way. We will spend a lot of time having to survey or mark for those in question.
Seemingly, the easy thing to do is to leave it as is. It just becomes more challenging.
As is says right of way too, right?
No, as is just like park it in the backyard. Which means you would find all of the driveways in violation.
So all driveways are on. It's a liberty issue. I mean, people could put something in their driveway if they want, if it's not in the right of way.
All right, so chew on that. Number 25, discussing possible approval for the resolution. We're looking at the development agreement with Marina Island.
Yeah, so two things I want to point out to you. On page 40, there is a blank that we need to fill in either today or at the public hearing regarding the dedication of public parking spaces. We, the city, are requiring, we need a year. We are requiring that upon completion of phase 2 that they dedicate public parking spaces. And so the trigger is upon completion of phase 2 of the project or December 31st, 2000 blank, whichever occurs first. we don't, I don't know that we have a good handle on when they will finish phase two. It may be that they do phase one and then the market tanks and they don't do anything for a while. If you put something that says, I don't know, 2028, they're still required to dedicate those parking spaces and have them available, even if they decide not to go forward with phase two. So that's the analysis in terms of determining the state. It's to make sure they get dedicated even if phase two stalls for some reason.
So do they have a timeline?
Right now, they've only committed, I think, to getting phase one done in the next 2 to 5 years.
They're building roads and stuff first.
Yeah. Amanda, their timeline for phase one is to get it completed within 2 to 5 years, right?
I'd have to look it up. I don't recall.
Okay.
They're doing the marina first, is what I know.
Anyway, but y'all can pick any date you want as, again, that pressure point to make sure that if nothing else happens, at least that dedication of public parking does. So you don't have to decide right now, but we do need to fill in that blank before the conclusion of the public hearing on Tuesday. And then the other thing I want to bring to your attention on pages 34 and 35, I have added the language regarding buffers and notices. So page 34, the very top, it requires the developers to give notice to all new property owners that their property, where it does, abuts existing industrial properties outside. That was the proposed language that was on the table before you when you adopted the overlay district, and this language was incorporated in the overlay district. On page 35, you've got the buffer language. Again, this is the same buffer language that we included in the overlay district. The attorney for Merrick has pointed out to me I have left out the word industrial at the end of the first sentence, so I'll be plugging that back in so that it matches exactly. The attorney for Marina Island has indicated that these inserts are not necessary because they're already in the overlay district. That may be true, but there's a lot of language here that's also in the overlay district that they're not asking to remove, so I'll just leave that there.
It's better be safe than sorry.
Yes.
So that there's no
Absolutely.
dispute.
So we're pushing on with the, right on the heels of the overlay, we're doing the development agreement. Is this normal process, or are we kind of pushing the development agreement?
So generally, the development agreement, and there's no reason they shouldn't have run in sync. They just didn't get timed that way for this adoption.
Okay. It raised an eyebrow on me, is that, hey, are we rushing into this development agreement without really looking at it and putting all the teeth in it we need to?
Well, that's completely up to you. Again, the effect of this development agreement is different than the overlay district. The overlay district was policy. It has to do with the development of land. This is a contract. It still speaks to the development of land, but the purpose it serves, this also gets recorded in the public records so that if they sell any portion of the property, that new developer gets put on notice of all of their obligations. But also, this secures their entitlements for 30 years, which is a big value add.
Yeah, and it helps them pre-sell. Right. So, so what we're doing here, though, but are we making sure that they're on the hook? I mean, they build the roads, they build the infrastructure.
This does
correct?
this, but I want to also make certain the development agreement required by statute or authorized by statute only requires, as it's for its contents, what the city is going to cap in terms of height, density, use, and duration, if there's any timelines. Those are the statutory requirements. All of this other stuff we have added is more in the nature of a public-private partnership, and that's actually not what this agreement is supposed to do. It's really just supposed to vest certain rights and obligations. That would be a different document. We have built in some public necessity. We've required some timelines to make sure that the public facilities are dedicated or at least determined by date certain, which is your opportunity and window to do that. We have agreed to cooperate with them on the development of signage and the rails to trails, but we haven't made really any promises on behalf of the city other than we're going to honor these development rights. With regard to infrastructure, we do require the infrastructure to be completed by the end of phase one, or that we also require an escrow, them to put 10% of the estimated cost of that infrastructure So
And
that
on every phase.
well, we want all of it for phase one. We want all of the infrastructure completed by the end of phase
Right,
one. We
right.
want the escrow so
But the
that
next
if they
phase,
fail,
they
we can do
put
it.
10% down too, and when it's complete.
Well, the idea is that the roads and the utilities are in place by the end of phase one for all of it.
Yeah.
So
Is 10%, is that normally the rate that you would ask?
I don't know that there is a normal rate to ask for in this situation. This was to give the city something, to be able to
Are they
finish the
paying
project
the
if it needed to.
mobility impact fee too?
The mobility fee, yes.
They'll pay the mobility fee
Yes.
based on the entire project
Yeah, as they build.
or in phases?
Yeah, in phases, as they build, yeah. Only,
Should that be in there?
well, the one, that we outlined the impact fees that the city is waiving, that's exactly right.
I guess that was one of my concerns, was the 10%. Is that enough? And I don't even know the answer to that question.
That's a business decision, not a legal one. The fact that we're requiring escrow, I think, is a good recommendation because it gives the city some ability to finish and come in and complete the essential infrastructure. However, if the project never gets completed, there may be no need to
Ghost town.
improve any infrastructure and finish anything.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of infrastructure
Pre-sale.
at play here. 10% is going to be a hefty number when that number gets determined. It's still only 10% of whatever the number is that we think to build it. So if you want to increase it, again, that's a business decision. I think the requirement for some money deposited for the infrastructure is a good tool to make the developer and future developers understand the city is watching, and that's important to us.
Does the developer have any idea how much it's going to cost for each phase? That way we can get an idea what the 10% is. They probably don't have an idea, do they?
I bet they don't yet. If they do, I have to defer to Amanda. Do they have any idea what infrastructure is going to cost?
Well, not the infrastructure, but the project.
These are,
10% of what the
I mean,
project is.
I only ask questions that the city requires us to ask for the things they need, like development orders or overlays. Their business, thing, that's kind of like that. I wouldn't ask their private stuff like
They
that.
said they were so close to getting to the development order phase. I just thought it
They are, from what they're telling me, they are waiting to submit a development order. Once this has all gone through, they anticipate submitting a development order within the next, I would say, 8 weeks. But I'm assuming, I don't know whether that's going to be phase one or part of phase one and the marina, because what they kept telling me was the marina was going to be first. So I don't know if they're going to do some of the other stuff in phase one with that development order or not, but I haven't asked them how much money they're spending on anything.
I mean, you understand what I'm getting at. It's like, if we have an idea what the project's going to cost, we can get an idea of what 10% amount would be, and would that be, I think that would be enough to cover anything if this went south.
It's never going to be enough to cover. It's never going to be enough to cover. It's enough to get the developer's attention that this is a priority to the city and give you a little bit of leverage to finish up the most important parts that they may leave undone.
Can I also just remind you all that a development order is only good for 12 months. So when they do come for a development order, they have to have all that infrastructure in within 12 months.
Thank you.
I got one more question. This is, just reading it over, I mean, you know how DR Horton, we have that stipulation where someone could come in and build a bunch of homes and have their own inspections with the city, with the state required that, and they
With the
get a
private
discount with
inspections.
private inspections. Is that a good idea or a bad idea when they're doing this as far as, because I'm pretty sure if they build at that rate, they'll probably have private inspections. So are we gonna wanna put a caveat in there or something to say that we're gonna inspect it?
I don't know that we can't do that. State law allows them to do private inspections. I don't know that we can mandate.
Yeah.
I doubt they'll use a private, for this type of development,
Yeah.
I think they're probably going to have trouble finding local people. I don't know who they use out on 30A, but I think they're the kind of people that can be using to develop it. And I doubt very much that they will be using local private providers to, instead of going through the actual process, because it's a different type of product. I mean, that's just,
wanted to
you
throw
can
that
always
out there.
ask them. I mean, I don't know whether someone is coming to the meeting, but that's something that I can always ask them for you. You know, try and get an idea of whether they were thinking about using private providers. I doubt it very much, because it's a high-end product.
All right, any other questions or suggestions for this?
My biggest concern that I brought up last time was the impact fees. I know we had talked about it. It's hard to gauge it because I've never done this since I've been in the commission. And I looked at the ones that you sent me, and it's not really an apple comparison, unfortunately. So like for stormwater, they're not gonna pay any impact fees. Is that fair? And so one of the things, I understand what they're trying to say. They're trying to say all the stormwater is gonna be on Marina Island. But also there's gonna be the road.
where the outfalls
The
into the
road, right. And the road that's gonna be built from 390 to Marina Island, which is gonna add impervious area. So should it be 100% exempt from impact fees? You know?
Yep.
If it's gonna be 100% exempt, they'll have to design their stormwater facilities will still be required, not that they'll have to capture it all, as long as that remains private. And there's no impact to the city system.
Right, and they have to maintain it.
That's correct.
Right. But my question is, the road that they're building from 390 to Marina Island, that's gonna add impervious area, and that's gonna add a stormwater system. We're gonna be the ones that's
Yeah,
required
that's
to
going right
maintain
through
that.
in here.
So is it really 100% exempt?
Well, do you want to build out, shall not be, so the road is not within the overlay district, is it? Or is it?
No, I don't think so. I don't know.
Okay, so we can, the property only includes land within the overlay district. It wouldn't include that 390 property then.
But you see what I'm getting at? I mean, even though I understand what you're saying, it's not on the property, the project itself.
There's a
is
little bit of
impacting The
There's
city
a-
when it comes to stormwater.
Well,
There's a little nook of it that's in the overlay that's on the other side of the water. It's like toward the end of 10th Street. That's in the overlay, that last part of 10th Street going over. And that affects, homes that are already there. The overlay map looked like it came out and over the bridge a little bit because they wanted to build along that way a little bit.
all right, so do you want to, with regard to the stormwater facilities they're meant to design, do you want to require them to design their stormwater to accommodate the new impervious space they're adding to that 390 entrance road?
No, I mean, that wasn't really my question. My question was
Impact fee.
the impact fees themselves. Does that mean they should be 100% exempt from stormwater impact fees? If that's
Stuff on
going
this
to be
side of the
added?
water it's gonna affect people that reside here already.
Right.
Well, I mean, I can take out, I
That was a question. It wasn't, a statement. What do you guys think? I mean,
if you're all concerned about that 390 road and the impacts to the stormwater system, we can acknowledge that there will be some to that piece of right of way for which they will not be exempt from stormwater fees. If you would like, I mean, there is a way to address it if it is
Yeah.
a concern.
Let's address
It's
it.
just the time.
All right, any other, I know Commissioner Wood has his thoughts, any other input on that particular issue, where it's stormwater? All right, so we want to revise it or leave it as the,
I think we need to revise it. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think we should.
Okay.
The Park and Recs, that one made sense to me. Law enforcement and fire rescue. My question on that was, do we want to put a definitive timeline on this or just leave it as a vague statement of, I think it's like after phase 1 or something?
well, I see it says 70% in phase 1
Right, yep, yeah, you're right.
So I don't know if that will fall in that 2 to 5 year time. I do understand what you're saying.
Or do we want to just leave it like that? Because they're not going to go to phase 2 until they totally finish phase 1, right? You see, because like, let's say they do 60% of phase 1, like, let's skip that, let's go start to phase 2, you know?
They could.
You know what I'm getting at?
I mean, I know what you're saying. I mean, logically, it wouldn't make sense, but I mean, they could say, hey, we've built enough over here. Let's start on phase 2 and not worry about phase 1. They could give us the okie doke like that.
But they would have to do a development order. Every time that they do something, you remember, you have to approve it.
So can we,
Development.
so let's say so the development orders are by project, right? So
Right.
like project 1, they have a development order. Then let's say they send a development order for project 2. Can we say, no, we want you to finish project 1 first, or we want you to do at least 70% of the project?
Usually the development order is by phase. They may split it up to phase 1A, 1B, but it would be by phase. And so it would always come to you first. So if they brought something to you for a phase and they hadn't finished the first phase, I feel like, and Amy, you can tell me if I'm correct in this, I feel like you could, if, with justification, not approve that second development order if they hadn't met what you required on the first development order.
Yeah, I'm going to add language to that effect.
Yeah, but if we could put, because if we're talking 2 to 5 years, we're not going to be here. You may not be here to remember, oh yeah, we can do X, Y, Z.
Right.
So I think it would be good to put it on, paper. And specifically if we're concerned about the law enforcement and fire rescue, that, you can't go to phase 2 until that's actually done. So
Right.
whether it is the 60% part and they decide they want to start phase 2, that you can't go to phase 2 until that's actually done. So I think that's the bigger concern. I don't care if you start at phase 2 or phase 4, but if that isn't built, then we don't go to phase.
Because if, I'm not saying they're going to do that or anyone's going to do that, but
That's a possibility.
but let's say they did, it could really put our fire and law enforcement in a predicament where it's like, wow, we don't have another spot over there for a fast response.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I was looking at that with that. So. And then the water and wastewater collection, it says reimbursement shall be capped at 50%. I want to explain what.
You can come water and wastewater collection.
Which page are we on?
That is phase 4.
Phase 4.
Number 4.
The cost reimbursement agreement.
Oh, yeah, when they oversize something, so I doubt that will come into play here though, because very likely they're going to run their own dedicated force main, probably across the bayou from what it looks like. So I doubt that anybody in the future will be able to tie into it, but it's the same thing with what we did for, Jake's Landing, where they upsize and in the future, they can get credit back for anybody that ties into it in the future.
But, so when it says reimbursement shall be capped at 50%.
Right,
Is
you
that
don't reimburse them
50%?
for 100% of
Is
it.
that 50% of the entire project?
50% of what is upsized,
What is upside?
right,
And
the
what we
cost
collect.
difference.
It's
Okay.
50% of what you collect on the upside.
Right.
Right.
I can explain it.
Yes.
The 50% is reimbursement through the impact fees. If somebody ties on and they pay 2,000 impact fees, then 1,000 would go to the developer. It would be under a separate written agreement on what the total dollar of reimbursement would be.
Okay.
Let's say they needed a 6-inch line, we ask them to put in an 8-inch. That extra capacity is basically reserved for us.
Okay.
So we would only
So
put,
they go from 6 to 8 inch, then it would be capped at 50% for that upgrade.
correct, just the additional upgrade, not for the whole line.
Right. Just the extra cost.
Yes.
And remember, again, that's a different agreement. I think I sent you example one, the cost
Yeah.
of recovery.
Yeah.
That would be an agreement.
We've
that would
done
have
that
to come
several
to the
times.
commission.
Mill Bayou, Jake's Landing, Marina Bay. So,
Okay. Appreciate it.
All All right, and I know, Amy, you highlighted here on page 40 for us, with completion of phase 2 of the project or a date. Did we want to put a date in there? Or did we want to leave that to the completion of phase 2? I think a date would be good to sort of give everyone a projection of what should be done, or progress and development with a date.
I don't think we need to leave any blanks.
Yeah. So is there a suggested date, December 31?
Should we first, are we gonna have anyone from here on Tuesday? Is anyone coming on Tuesday that we could ask a question?
Yeah, but
But the purpose of this date is it's something that it's not within the developer's control.
Yeah, but we could kind of pick their brains on what they actually think it's gonna take. And then, read the room on if they're lying or not. I'm just kidding.
Well, and just pick a date that makes sense for the city. I mean, if you're going to continue to do a 4th of July fireworks show out there,
Yeah.
and you're going to need parking, and you want that parking no matter what by a date certain,
Yeah.
say what that date certain is, and that gives predictability to the developer that if he's constructing the marina at that same time, he's going to have to make arrangements or get that marina constructed so he can dedicate those parking spaces, and there's not a conflict.
Right.
We're creating a tension on purpose.
Yeah, right. But it is nice to talk to the people and see.
I mean, we can ask them, but they're going to still give us somewhat an ambiguous answer because it's going to be based on the market, the money.
You're right.
He'll want something at least 10 years from now so that there's not an early trigger.
Right.
But it's in, I think, the city's best interest to have an earlier date as opposed to a later one.
Because how long have we been talking about this project? I mean, I know before we were on the commission. So that's what we're saying, like, this has actually been 8 years now.
I think it's
After this point.
2017. And then before that, they were trying to work since 2015, I think, getting property from the Air Force.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's taken 8 years just to get to this piece of paper.
Yeah.
Why after phase 2? Why not after phase 1? Just out of curiosity. If they're doing the marina first.
I don't remember the genesis of that. Phase 2 may have been what they asked for, and I may have countered with I want a date certain. But I don't remember. I don't remember.
I think, sounds like to me we need to get more information from the developer as far as their timeline.
That's what kind of what I was getting at. I know that it's for us to force, but if they truly think it's going to take like 10 years to get through phase 2, we wouldn't want to be like, all right, 2027.
I mean, we've signed a 30-year, we're signing a 30-year agreement. So
Yeah.
that's their long-range projection. So it could be 10 years. I mean, we can ask them, but
Right.
With a 30-year agreement, they're looking at.
They're going to give us the longest date possible.
Yeah.
Once I make these changes, I'll have to send all the parties a new version of this agreement so that they are aware of it. I'd like to go ahead and put a date in there so that they could be ready to respond to it on Tuesday night.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
What do you think, 10 years? I don't know.
It's 2025, say 2030.
2030?
Give them something to work towards.
Yeah.
5 years.
Okay.
Okay.
What do you think, Commissioner?
I'm fine with 5 years.
December, okay?
5 years.
Okay.
December, okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Any other?
The only other thing I had was under the law enforcement fire rescue, I forgot was, it says, the developer and city agree that a fire station within the project will be necessary as the project is developed, and the developer agrees that a minimum of 1 acre should be set aside to the use of a fire station built by the city or developer.
Right. So the timeline is provided no development order shall be issued for phase 2 until the facility is constructed. That may force a conversation about who is in a position to construct it and with what funds.
Okay, so that can still be negotiated then.
Yeah.
We don't hammer that out now?
Where's the date? Or it'll be like no value.
Yep.
That's true.
Right.
Well, I mean,
That's why I
if
brought it
they
up.
can't get development orders for phase 2, they'll be highly motivated to come to some resolution, whether with their finances or if there's some way the city can bond or get reimbursed. I mean, it will force a conversation to see that that facility gets constructed, but we don't have to have the answer as to exactly when and exactly how right now.
We're But also we're saying that they're not totally responsible for building it either.
We're not letting them off the hook entirely. They may, if they want their phase 2 development order and they can't get it until that facility is constructed, it incentivizes them to problem solve with the city as to how to get that constructed. Can they do it with their crews that are already mobilized out there? Does the city go through do you cost share it somehow? You'll have to problem solve it, but it gives you the ability to force that conversation.
Would that work to our advantage to do that way?
Assuming having the
I
facility
think it'll be
constructed
us
is the most
trying-
important thing, it
trying
forces that
offer.
conversation. It may, if that is the most important thing, it also may force the city to find a way to pay for it.
But we're giving
Your
them
alternative,
concessions on
though, is to
impact
amend
fees.
this
Let's
if it doesn't
require
make
them to
sense.
build
It's a
it.
30-year agreement, and some of this, as the project gets started, you may decide doesn't make sense, and you want to change it or make it stronger.
So what are you thinking, Commissioner Furlong?
I said, we're giving them concessions on impact fees.
So you think it
So
should just
I
say
think we should
developer?
language it where they build it. Plus,
Okay.
they want the aesthetics and the facade. What if we build an eyesore out there? They'll be done, you know?
This is true.
Yeah.
They're gonna make
We're in a
millions
position,
of
we're in a position now to, you know,
these buildings.
ask for the moon,
So
for the stars.
like Commissioner Vandergrift was bringing up, I was trying to prevent another value situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we just.
You gotta build the roads, infrastructure, and the annex. They'll want to.
It's so built by the developer.
So everybody's want it by developer?
Okay.
Giving them the options.
Now, we have to agree
Give them
whatever they
beautiful
build, right? They
pile,
can't just build like a little shack.
Well, they'll get a development order, but
I was just gonna, I actually had a question because there's a lot of units gonna go out there, it's gonna bring a lot of taxes into the city. So the city is responsible for, health and safety. So ordinarily, we provide fire services to the city. They're gonna bring in a lot of tax revenue. We're still responsible for providing, and health and safety is our primary, that's why we're here as a city, is for health and safety. So my question is about the taxes. Does some of the taxes, that tax money that we get, does some of that go to health and safety, fire, that kind of thing?
do you have a fire assessment?
No.
No.
We don't have a fire
Then
system.
no, it goes into the general fund.
It goes in the general fund. Okay, but we still kind of have that, so I know they're building all that stuff out there, but the city
All
is
those people
gonna,
have to pay insurance, and there has to be a response time by the fire and police in order for them to keep their insurance down for everybody. So it's on the developer, as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
yeah, they are gonna build. Yeah, they are.
But the other question I had is, do we get to determine what it's going to be designed like, or they?
Yeah, it says right now that the size, design, and location shall be determined by mutual agreement of city and developer.
Yeah, that's.
We could leave it there,
So
but
yes, that
put
size
them on the
and
hook to
design.
build it.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Hmm?
That was
They
all I
want to
had.
build it? Yes. They want to word it. Don't
Well,
say,
it-
hey, we'll negotiate.
It already
If
has,
they-
the language already says the developer shall have the option to design and construct the fire station. They would like to control the process, but the city wants to control the timeline.
Right. Yeah, that's all we're trying to figure out.
That's all.
When it's built.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was worded as such that we, that we were gonna have to come to them and say, hey, I didn't think the way you were talking, it didn't sound like they were on the hook to build it.
You're on the hook to at least dedicate the land. Again, my fear is that they start phase
Let's
one
word
and they
it
never
so-
finish it. And so I still wanted the city to be able to get the
Well, let's-
dedication of land, even if the project failed.
Let's word it so they know they're building it.
Okay?
I hate to make you burn wood, but
Well, no, it's just,
You know.
we change it from the developer has the option to design and construct to the developer has the obligation to construct.
That was all. I had.
Sounds good. That's
Alright.
enough. Any other, no, that's good stuff. Anyone else? All right, moving on to item 15. appoint a new member to the city's board of adjustments, 59 through 74. Any questions for Amanda about that?
Who's responsible for appointing this one?
It's my turn.
Okay.
Yeah.
He gave my turn away.
No, I thought this was still seat one because it was Miranda who appointed at the last one and she declined.
He did seat one already. It was seat two's turn,
And I gave it to,
and he gave it to Miss Judy
But
because
one of
she
the
was
people,
going out.
one of the seats you already appointed
There was-
stepped down, right? So wouldn't it still be one of you two?
Well, my question is that Miranda was brought in before we had the new.
Yeah, she
Okay,
was
okay,
on.
okay.
She was on the sweetheart
Yeah.
deal.
All right, then yeah.
Yeah.
Then you're next.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
do you have any suggestions that you want us to consider, Commissioner Furno?
I kind of,
Tuesday.
yeah, well, I mean, I know Corey, I know Miss V, but when I got to, Miss, Miss Neves, I didn't talk to her yet, but I saw Wesley Lockwood, and I saw his resume and stuff, so I gave him a call this morning, and he's already called me back, but I was on my way here. But his resume looks pretty darn good as far as, I mean,
Is he the one that worked for the Department of Transportation?
yeah, and he's got and he's in construction, and so, I mean, that's who I'm leaning toward, but I'm gonna talk to everybody before Tuesday. So, but just to give you a little sniff of where I'm going.
You said, who was that person again?
It's the last application.
Lockwood? Wesley. All right.
On paper, he looks good, you know.
Another catfish.
Yeah, I want to meet him. I don't know if he's like a, you know, could be an elementary student, who knows?
Number 16, this is in regards to signing an amendment to the contract with Marine South Solutions. Any questions for the Director of Public Works and Utilities?
Yes, so I know it's 10 cents per gallon. How many gallons do we typically do?
So right now, we're hauling about 80 to 100 loads a month at 6,500 gallons a truckload.
Are we doing it the old way now?
So we're back to doing it the old way. So the centrifuge is down again.
So didn't we spend a bunch of money
We
on that?
did, we did. So it's like I was talking to Mr. Walker before the meeting, and the best analogy I can use for this thing is that your grandmother bought a Ford Pinto brand new and drove it for a few years
Got ran in the
and
back.
parked it. And then the grandkid wants to drive now, and so you put a bunch of money into it to get it going, but every time you drive it, something happens to it. So it's every time our centrifuge gets up and running for a few months.
What's a Ford Pinto?
It's something, if you get rear-ended, it blows up.
So the centrifuge is down, it's back in the shop. We're hauling liquid as we did before. Our sludge hauler has a belt press they can bring in. This is not to save a bunch of money, so don't anticipate that this is going to be a huge money savings by approving this amendment, but it helps us operationally keep our head above water, no pun intended, but it keeps us able to move the sludge as it's supposed to. It keeps the plant operating. As we come into the hot months of the summer, we have to waste a lot more sludge, and so the sludge production will drastically increase.
So is this gonna eventually get fixed?
So the centrifuge, it's in the shop, they're going through it to determine exactly what it's gonna cost again to keep it rolling. But we also, when you approve the mid-year budget, we put money in the budget for a screw press. Waiting on some numbers back from that, see if it's feasible to purchase one, and we'll present
So
those
this is the
options.
best alternative until.
In the interim, yes, sir.
Thanks for the good news.
Gotta ask. So, I mean, you're spending a little bit more than what you're spending to haul right now to concentrate more and more. Right? Basically, that's what this little,
Yeah, so
to do what
hauling,
the centrifuge would do.
so hauling in liquid form, so you fill a tanker truck up, 6,500 gallons,
Yeah, you're,
they drive off, and 4 hours later, they come back, and you haul another 6,500 gallons. This belt press sets up, and it runs 12 hours a day, dewatering the sludge, and it can fill up like one or one bed of a truck is about 4 to 6 liquid truckloads that it
You're
takes you
not
to get.
peeing in.
Right, you're fighting yourself in circles all day.
So, now, the reason I smiled at you was, if we got, if we got years down the road and we closed the plant and had the other one, you wouldn't even be worried about this right now.
Amen.
And it wouldn't be a cost to the city, would it? It would be built in on billing and services.
Yes, sir.
Just wanted to see what.
17, discussion of the comprehensive plan. And we are looking at also adding, not for this meeting, but within the next meeting or so, also adding some discussion towards the universal or the unified land development code as well. So to discuss that also in coordination with the comprehensive plan. In addition to our ordinances that we're working on too. So a lot of things for us to consider in the next few meetings. But in regards to discussion of the comprehensive plan, I know that we given staff the direction to go ahead and submit what they needed to submit, or we as the city needed to submit to the state. They received that back. They're making those changes. So now we have our time frame in which we can begin looking through the comprehensive plan as well. Is there any direction or suggestion from staff, city manager, on how we should be proceeding in
Yes.
beginning of our discussion?
So Amanda and I actually, and Bobby met yesterday with a couple of bullet points we want to share with you. Amanda, you can come up.
Thank you. So I think that I have actually a copy here for each of you of the required and optional elements of the comprehensive plan. So I think the first thing that I want to stress is that the only reason we have a comprehensive plan is because we have to have one by the state, requires us to have one. What goes in there on the whole is what the state requires us to put in there. So there are things in there that we have to have in there. You are able to put other things in there, but there's a format by which you need to follow. I've highlighted the areas that are the things that we have to have, the required elements. As you go through here, when you see a little bit of a highlight, that's because they're the things that are required. On line 8, it states, it is not the intent of this part to require the inclusion of implementing regulations in the comp plan. So the comp plan does not have the rules for actually implementing things. They are in the ULDC. So the ULDC, you can change. It's local level. What is in the comp plan has to be implemented through the ULDC, but we can also put our own stuff in the ULDC so that if we want to give a variance on it, we can, or if we want to change it, we can at your level, at the local level. Anything that's in the comp plan that's in the ULDC, you cannot change at the local level. You cannot give a variance on. So just bear that in mind. Whatever you want to put in there that isn't in there, if it is approved by the state, you then have to apply it to everybody. You cannot give a variance. You cannot change it. You cannot add conditions. That's the main thing. The comp plan stays the same. It's state level. Anything we put in there, we have to support by surveys. It has to be based upon relevant and appropriate data, may include but not limited to surveys, studies, community goals, and vision. So, and usually it will either fall into one of the elements that is already there, or we will create a new element which will have to have its own goals and policies and objectives. My recommendation is that the person who is assisting us now with the changes that were required by the state for the ORC report, that once you kind of, get going with what you would like to see in there, is to have him come in. He used to work at that State Department, so he knows it inside out. He still knows people who work there. So, and he is always writing comp plan stuff for cities, but now he's on his own. He's cheaper. He used to work for Wilson Miller, Then Stantec took over Wilson Miller, so he worked for Stantec for years, but he's on his own now, so he's cheaper. My recommendation is that at some point, you have him come in and do a workshop with you, or look at what it is you've set out. It's up to you, whatever stage, just to assist you, help you focus, and also he can take charge of actually writing it so it's formatted in the way that the state will accept. Thank you.
So one of the things we did talk about was that you may want to go in and insert some things in there, and they may sound good, but when we bring in this person, they may say, that just will not work for this particular comp plan. So here's another way of wording it or taking it out. So we don't want to hold you up, and we want you to move forward and start, making changes where you think we need to make those changes, and then this person can come back and give you guidance as to why you can or cannot do those things. That was our thought process. If you want to do something different, surely go ahead.
I think we go through it, and then once we've completed it, have a workshop with that individual or whomever else you all would suggest, then tailor it from there.
I know I won't be involved, but in reading it the last couple of days, you can tell it's been written by different people. I think it needs to be consistent, and a lot of it is grammatically incorrect. I know that's the school teacher in me coming out, but some are just giant run-on sentences. Some are broken down into shorter sentences. Some areas are listed, and some start with verbs. The other one starts with an adjective. It's just grammatically incorrect. Now, that's not even talking about some of it's outdated. Okay.
Now, would you like, I know you're rolling off the commission, but, we could commission you to, recommend grammar for us.
No, you can commission me to go home and be with my grandchildren.
Well, they're not going to be there all the time.
It's summer. They might.
But I do agree with her that it probably has been written by certain people. You can hear the voices. And so having that one person after you have suggested your changes to come in and do it, I think is going to be very consistent and probably a lot more explicit that people understand it better.
All right. So are there any other questions about the comp plan?
All right, now. For the grammatical error, you can just copy and paste into ChatGPT and say, fix all the mistakes.
Or just have AI just rewrite the whole thing.
AI. Did we skip over the lawn care one?
It's at the end.
No, that's going to be added for number 20.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And of course, we'll just be discussing the non-binding referendum for question 2 concerning the library in the Northwest Florida Regional Library. So, non-binding referendum question number 1 failed or got no's, and then question 2 got yeses. So, as I'm reading that, yes, we want something, to go to read books, but we don't want, to have to building in excess of $2 million to do that. And we also want to have something in coordination with Northwest Florida Regional Library as well as part of that. So, yeah, there's a no and a yes with that. I guess our question, although it's non-binding, we can say it's non-binding, there is an expectation there for us to do something moving forward and providing a space for our community to come together and in a library type setting that's connected with the Northwest Florida Regional Library. So, City Manager, any thoughts on how we move forward with
Yes.
that, considering that?
So Northwest Florida Regional Library has reached out to us again to meet, and I think they wanted the mayor to actually be at this meeting as well. So I was going to wait till after today to set up a meeting to just chat and talk about so you could hear and then discuss with the commission as well. I do feel like that we've already put the infrastructure in place here at the senior center. I mean, that was one of the reasons we put that infrastructure in place there, to utilize that other area as part of a building to accommodate a media center there. I think it works well. Would there probably be some additions or just a few additions or to make it work even better? Probably, but I don't think it's going to be astronomical cost. And so if you would allow us just to do some estimates, pull together some estimates to see what that looks like, and then bring it back to you.
I've had a lot of input from various seniors as because of the disruptions, for example, the voting, but then they also threw in about the idea of using it as a media center. The seniors are very opposed to it.
I understand.
And, I'm just throwing out ideas, okay?
Yeah.
What are we using the old building for right up here?
Offices, and really that's a commission area there once it gets finished, and it's not very large to accommodate any type of,
I think really what we need to know is the scope of the size of.
that's
Yeah.
what I would.
So before we make any type of decision, we need to know what the size is. Because if it's just like a small 15 by 15 room with some computers and then they order books that come in, we have a ton of options. But if we are looking at a large scale thing, the options dwindle real quick.
And I definitely understand the seniors' concern. The seniors lease that place from the city. That's a leasing, but the city actually owns the building there. And just remember, if you try to find somewhere else, you're gonna have to put in infrastructure for that particular one is already done. The seniors come Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And so it may be something like we had set up before with the library. Some days it was a short amount of time that was open, or it's set up after the seniors leave, or those days that they're not there, it opens. The library actually was like that, had different hours.
Yeah.
And so I would just say you allow us to kind of do some investigation of that, and as you said, bring it back to you.
The original library, somebody was telling me that the money was donated, or there were some restrictions as to the use, and that's the reason it was not connected to the county library? Because, do you remember that?
I mean, I remember hearing that. I remember Mr. Walker mentioned that previously, is that we weren't connected with Northwest Florida Regional because of the parameters in which we received the
money.
Receive the library and monies for that. However, I know the plan has been, since I've been part of the commission, has been to reestablish a library on that lot, as well as connecting with Northwest Florida Regional, which is why we could have a smaller library in scope. So it was always meant to be smaller in scope than probably what the original library was, or at least have fewer resources there. I think we're talking about maybe 15 to 20,000, or around 10,000 on site before, because of the connection with Northwest Florida Regional Library System. So,
And if you remember, the finance committee did ask that we not spend money on rebuilding an entire library. That was their vote as well, that we brought to you all. So yes, it's always had the idea of really more of a media technology center more than anything, because we can get books easily from Northwest Florida Regional Library. So we can do some research and pull together something that we can bring back to you all.
Yeah, but yeah, today is no decision making, just discussion on how do we want staff to proceed going forward as we're looking at these different options. All right, 19, discussion regarding chemical and lawn services, RFP for that.
Yes.
I'm sure if you noticed the price, I'm not sure if it was even included in there. The price has gone up approximately $100,000, a little bit more over the last contract. And for me to explain this, I want to take you back for a second to our last contract that was awarded at the end of FY22. It was for $153,000 and incorporated 3 property locations. It was mowing and chemical treatment on the medians on 77, the baseball fields at Kane Griffin, and about 75% of the sports complex. Now, aside from that, we have locations that we also need chemical treatment, such as City Hall, Sheffield Park, Kensall Park, various areas around town. And what we wanted to do this time is include those properties in under this new contract. In FY23, for those separate properties, we spent about $28,000. FY24, we spent $45,000. And as of today, for those same properties, we're about $38,000, and we still have several months left in the year. So post 2020, it's just the cost of living. Everything is going up. So if it stays on the same trajectory that it is on, those same properties in FY26, we will spend a little shy of $70,000. So I want to incorporate that into this contract.
So if I hear you correctly, it's cheaper to contract it out as opposed to us doing it?
We're not capable of doing it. There are some restricted use pesticides. We would have to get licensing plus equipment. And honestly, we would probably have to hire another staff member.
But it doesn't just include chemicals, it means mowing the lawn?
Well, the only thing different with lawn maintenance is we're adding the gymnasium and the Boys and Girls Club to the mowing portion. Everything else would be chemical related.
So that's the only part that they're mowing, and we mow the rest?
We mow the rest. Everything else we mow. They're going to continue with the medians, with Kane Griffin sports fields, and then they will do 100% of the sports complex.
And so the reason that there's only one company that has the certifications necessary to, did I misread that?
No, I think what ended up happening is when they first came in, we had a scoring committee that scored, and there were 3 that were considered responsive at the time. One of those 3 was the company that we terminated their contract for poor performance. So now we were down to 2. When we started looking at licensing, there was some ambiguous stuff, and we turned it over to Amy to try and clarify that. And Amy, I think, based on requirements of the bid documents, that precluded one of them.
When's their current contract expired?
We don't have a current contract. We terminated their contract. I want to say it was at the end of December, possibly.
So we're needing, it's like.
Oh, yes, staff has been, I'm down 2 people right now taking care of those additional properties, so.
Okay.
Right, so you were taking care of the stuff that they weren't contracted to do.
Right. And from a chemical standpoint, if you drive around, you can tell.
I didn't see the park in Bel Air.
That's not in there yet. It's not even constructed. It'll probably be a year out before it's finished, and we can always add that. What I try to do is our high visibility parks where we have huge events, Sheffield, City Hall, of course, the big field at Kensall. To give you an example of the price of this, last year before last, we replaced $16,000 worth of sod on 2 baseball fields due to mole crickets. So just the mole cricket treatment alone for the sports complex, I got quotes a month ago, $11,000 to $23,000 just for one treatment. And we have to treat anywhere there's turf because mole crickets eat from the roots, and you don't realize it until it's dead.
It happens quick.
And last year we had to treat Sheffield twice.
So you think this is a competitive price?
Well, I mean, we can always put it out to rebid, but this is the cost that we live in today. The world we live in is where costs are increasing.
Did we not include the scores in here?
You only ultimately had one that was responsive.
Okay, just one, okay.
But we can surely,
My question would be, so I guess the second one, the way I read it just meant like that they didn't provide some type of proof that they have some type of certification.
So with the bid response, you had to supply the licenses and the personnel who had the appropriate licenses to carry out the work at the time you submitted the bid. So it's not something you can after require.
Right.
And so there were two different sets of licenses that we got. They were not the same set. And so we had to dig into what this type of licenses, what the scope of this license permitted you to do and what the scope of this license permitted you to do. For lawnscapes, they had the licensure that allowed them to do everything in a commercial aspect by contract on their own property, for turf, for maintenance, all of it. Whereas what the other bidder could do was limited, particularly what they could do under contract. And they didn't have, I don't recall now, I think they didn't have the turf maintenance piece. I may be wrong about that, but there was one piece of the turf maintenance and chemical management that they didn't have, and they couldn't do on all of our properties under contract.
Okay. So they just want to make sure it wasn't I forgot to submit this, and they actually have it.
Well, even if they forgot to submit it, it would be non-responsive because it was required to be fully responsive. You had to submit it with your bid response.
So this shows, if I understand, if you do that, it could show that you're showing bias or favoritism,
Right.
why you don't do that.
Right.
Anything that's in bid docs that we require, when we open those big dots and we do digging, and sometimes, we miss it, we go back and we could, make sure that everyone have what they need, but they have to be able to send everything that we require. If it's a requirement, let's just give you an example. If we say all these required documents, drug-free, they don't put that one in, that's non-responsive because that is a required document you have to put in at the time you submit.
So the history is 5 submitted, 3 met the requirements initially. We thought one of them was the terminated contract. Second one didn't actually meet requirements, so we're down to 1. Okay.
That's a great way of saying it.
Can I ask a question if the other bids were competitive or close to this?
I think the next lowest bid to that one was about $18,000 cheaper.
And if we put it out for rebid, then
Yeah.
it might do that much damage waiting.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
you
goes up.
figure because of the cost of this, it has to be advertised for 21 days.
Right.
Then we have to score it. We have to go back before the
And in the
commission.
meantime, we got other areas that are
Right,
getting
and
damaged.
we're already into 4th of July and.
Yeah, we're already in
I get
the
it.
time of the whole crickets.
It's
are gonna kill the
unfortunate.
grass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know when we have put stuff back out to rebid, it has come back at a higher bid. Even
Oh, it
by-
does?
It has.
Even by those
Oh, it
same
has.
companies. Yeah, like that company said, okay, they'll come back at a higher bid.
Right. Okay.
Right, and we have that new agenda item, adding number 20.
So I did it right.
You had-
I know I added it, but I didn't put number 20 on there. So I'll just go with what,
Yeah, this was.
just go with it. The local mitigation, that's just, we already talked about that one. Okay,
Yeah, that's in consensus.
yeah, that's the trim, so we're talking about the trim one for the stormwater, yes. Thank you, Mayor. We did reach out to Stan Tech because we do understand that there has to be a public hearing, even though you have already accepted the fees, the stormwater rates. We still have to put that on the trim notice. And in order to do that, we have to have a resolution of you telling us, yes, we can go in and put it on the trim notice. And remember that you will still have a public hearing in September at one of our budget meetings to do that final adoption of the stormwater.
Any objections to having that resolution on, ready to go for Tuesday?
Amy and Kevin are working on it, and what it does, that resolution just recaps what you've already passed.
So when you change the rates or your methodology, it's a 2-step. So there's an initial resolution that is almost a directory resolution to memorialize the change in rates and methodology, directing it to be advertised. It's an extraordinary notice opportunity to make sure it gets on the trim, gets published. Things that are not necessarily required when you're keeping everything the same. So.
All right. Sounds good. See y'all Tuesday.